loves a little guitar riff for their Tuesday morning? I think Steve does. That's why Engineer Steve is holding it down in the stash. Just like you, gang. Thank you for hanging out right now. 10 to 11 o'clock hour. We got you locked in. Real Talk Radio San Diego. Trying to get all smart and stuff about what's going on in the local real estate and mortgage spectrum. It's a spectrum, right, Jer?
Sure.
That's fair, right?
Sure.
What would be on the left side of the spectrum?
Depends which way you're holding it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Fair enough. You're always on the right. That's why we got you in studio today.
I suppose.
Ooh, that was a little double entendre. Now you have to always be right. And I set the bar high.
Yeah.
You can't make any mistakes the rest of the show.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun.
Challenge.
Gang, 2 ways to hang out with us, actually, live in the stash and ask us any questions you might have about local real estate nonsensicals. Hopefully sprinkling some sensicals on the nonsensicals.
Call in with your sensicals.
Call in with your sensicals. Hope maybe leave us better than how you found us. We've got we're streaming live right now on the Twitters. Everything puts a the in front of it. At Follow the Stash. You can check us out right now. We're streaming live. You can ask us any question live. And you can also call in 866-405-1717. Again, that's 866-405-1717. Who knows? Maybe you're a buyer right now thinking, is it time for me to tip my toe in? Finally, I've been hunting down properties online like a voyeur for the last 7 months, and I think it's time to finally raise my hand right now. I need a mortgage plan. I need a real estate plan. I need to know where I stand.
Ooh, almost.
Yeah. Oh, no, it was there.
Yeah?
It was there. I think that rhymed. And who knows? Maybe you're a seller on the other side of this, and you're like, God, I've watched all my neighbors cash in recently up and down my street. Is it time for me now? Do I need a pinpoint price and a strategy to figure out how I'm going to get my top dollar? One thing that's a great corollary leading indicator to top dollar is foot traffic. And I was kind of shocked to see, because I remember last month we talked about foot traffic, and again, it was off the chains, and we were like, wow, foot traffic, because that's, of course, the way that's the metric that they sort of say it's an indicator of future sales, right?
Yeah. What is foot traffic?
Foot traffic is like a CSI style where you walk around and actually see what kind of shoes people have left in the imprints. No. It's people actually raising their hand, going into open houses, clicking on fancy stuff online, showing their interest that they're out there hunting around. Okay. Foot traffic has never been higher since 2013.
It's crazy.
What's that tell you?
I love when you start pairing these stats, because the most important thing when you're trying to do prediction models is to get lead indicators, like you said. Like what can I look at that's telling me a direction or a trend? And what better lead indicator could you be if looking at people who are thinking they're about to buy, or thinking about buying, or thinking about selling? I mean, of course, if you can see a blip in that, and it's relative to traffic, that's a great indicator.
Well, it's not only a fancy little cool thing that fits on well to your Sunday garment, Jer.
A robe.
But it's also direct corollary to the next stat, which is existing home prices. So we talked about sales through the roof.
Right.
So nice to also know that we're up 9.9%, dude.
It's nuts.
From this time last year. And by the way, we're leading the entire union. Midwest ain't got nothing on us. Only 7.2. South, same at 7.2. Northeast, they're still trying to get out of that frigid winter. They're still thawing up there at 3.9. So we're leading the game at basically 10%.
West is the best.
So I'm going to go back and I'm going to ask you that same theme, which I said earlier, is do you think this is easy for me to say?
Yeah.
Do you think this is easy for me to say, Jeremy?
I don't.
Do you think this is sustainable?
I don't. I mean, look, everything is cyclical, right? And you do something long enough, you see trends. And is this the top of the sales market, the bottom of the rates? We don't know. But we can imagine that there's an energy when you talk about sustainability. Is this trend going to continue in this direction at this pace? I mean, that's really all you can hope to talk about. And most likely that's not going to be. And what I talk about in terms of sustainability is are the homes that people are buying, because we're talking about transactions and increases in value, are the homes that people are buying affordable? And that's the difference between now and back in the big bubble, right? You got to have the money. You have to have the assets. Hell, if you're buying in the 500 to 700 range, you have to have a down payment pretty much. So we're talking about people who can really afford. I meet with people they've got their renters and they have $100,000 in the bank. So people have prepared themselves.
You got some rich friends.
Have prepared themselves for buying in this environment, and they're actually able to afford this. So there's some component of sustainability for sure. I can't I can't bang my fist and say this is all going to blow up.
Well, I hate to keep saying that you're talking about things we're going to talk about, but one of the interesting elements, which we're going to get to in a later segment, is actual wealth creation and the corollary of home ownership as a direct differential to your net worth and the amount of money you got in the bank.
Right.
And that is such an interesting thing because it's kind of like, I don't want to get the cart too far because we're going to play that whole thing out. Speaking, though, of leading indicators and calling people out, sellers, or I should say homeowners, we got you in the crosshairs right now.
Yeah.
This is a fun one. I had to LOL, Jer.
Yeah.
I had to LOL at this one. So appraiser home value opinions compared to the homeowner estimates has never been more off. Right?
Yeah.
And this is totally reasonable to me, right? Because you're online, you're listening to your friends talk about it on social media, you turn on the news, everybody's saying that it's back to 2006 levels. And in our little county here, in a lot of cases, it actually is. But for some reason, that's having a direct corollary to people thinking that their homes are worth way more than they actually are right now at a higher rate than they've been tracking before. So we're down to an all-time low. The differential seems to be about 1.5% off.
Okay.
Which
isn't terrible.
It's not terrible, but it's the highest it's been since they've been tracking this recently, right?
Sure.
So what do you think that tells you?
Well, I think there's this natural thing, and I get this a lot with rates, right? Well, people call up and say, I heard rates went down. And I asked, to what? Compared to what? How long ago? A week ago, yesterday, a month ago? And that's the problem is I think it's human nature to hear these sensationalized spurts from some clown on the radio.
Dun, dun, dun.
So who said, rates are down, right? Well, that's great. But you have to know what it's relative to. And the same thing happens with housing prices. People keep saying prices are up, prices are up. And every time someone tells you that, you do a little math in your head and say, oh, my home's probably now worth this.
Yeah.
And it's a feeling more than math. And the appraisers, unfortunately, are held accountable to the conversation of what's sold in your neighborhood. And that's a trick.
Imagine that.
So on the buyer side or on the seller side, you're in a real estate transaction where there's a supply and demand issue. On the refinance side, what we're seeing is that appraiser has to go out there and look at what sold recently. And sometimes the home that looks and smells like yours on paper was really kind of a dump and sold for a lot less. And so we see a little bit of a ceiling on that value increase compared to what people really want to pay.
Something's only worth what someone's willing to pay for it.
And the appraiser says.
And then a footnote, and the appraiser has to agree.
Right.
Or unless you want to soak up the difference out of your own pocket. But, it brings up a good point, and this isn't something that I was planning on riffing on, but you kind of got my wheels spinning here. I think there's a lot to be said about appraisals right now because, when we're seeing 10% increases, year over year, it puts a lot of stress on the appraiser to be able to basically catch up with what the buyers and sellers are agreeing to on the street. So let's say that you got a buyer, Jer, and they find a great house. There's a lot of competition. There was multiple offers, and they came out victorious. And somehow they found a way, and that way represented a specific number and a set of terms. So then they go and they start their due diligence process of escrow.
Yep.
And they go out there and they have to order an appraisal, right?
Yep.
So $450 usually, and it's a hard cost. You're not getting that back. You're basically trying to vet the property, right? What happens if it comes in low? What happens if the appraiser says, I don't see it, gang?
It's a good point. And it happens sometimes. So one of the things that you can do, obviously, is you can negotiate with the seller and say, look, it didn't appraise, and have that part of the conversation. You can pay the difference yourself, and you can split the difference. Or, heck, you can walk away.
Yeah. Kathy, by the way, our new buddy over in the Meerkat app, it's Kathy918 Adam. She's asking you, she says, how often should you get your house appraised, Jer?
Interesting. Well, only when there's utility because it costs money. So only if you have a reason to. I don't think that there's a particular reason to know the exact value, just as some might suggest don't watch your stocks every day, right? It doesn't do you any good to know what your stocks are worth unless you plan on selling them or doing something about it. So in theory, it doesn't drive anything in particular unless you're interested in potentially pulling out cash, looking at restructuring the financing that you have, maybe get out of MI, or potentially thinking about selling.
And I think what I'm hearing you saying, Kathy, great question, by the way. Thanks for asking that on our Twitter feed. Is that an appraisal is more tied to a transactional thing, right? So, like, if you're a seller or an owner, and you're not really in the throes of a refinance or anything else. Like sometimes if there's like a trust and and there's someone leaves the house, like you got to kind of lock it in and be like, okay, this is what it was when we kind of took it over and started. There's a lot of technical components, but but you wouldn't just go out and usually just buy an appraisal, right? You what you could do, Kathy, by the way, is you could call some knucklehead like me or anybody else who's got a respectable shingle around town in real estate and say, hey, do a comparative market analysis. What do you think my home would sell for right now? And the agent, if they're worth their wear, is going to get you close enough to be able to make an educated decision.
Sure.
Right? There could be a deflection, but even in an appraisal, it's still subjective, and there could be a deflection point. So the appraisal is more tied to the technicality of a transaction. Would you agree with that, Jer?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And she also asked, would there be any reason to get more than one?
Well, that I see a lot in conflict resolution, that sort of thing, where each party gets to pick their own. And when you're kind of battling, someone might have an incentive, say in a divorce situation, for the value to be lower, and some will have it higher. And then, maybe that's something that you'd want to do.
And by the way, Kathy, an appraisal is going to cost you close to $500. A CMA should be free. Yeah. So thanks for hanging out with us on the Meerkat app. And thank you, Stash Nation, for playing along in here. We got a couple ways that we'd love for you to interact with us today on our weekly State of the Union market wrap up. We got to get a better name for this thing. It's too long.
You're making it up every time.
I'm making it up as I go.
I think it's dynamic.
I'm waiting for it to just click in, and then it's going to happen right here live. And
once it rhymes.
Go, whoa. Two ways. Meerkat app the Twitter handle, and that's streaming live on the Meerkat app. That's @FollowTheStash. Or you can call in at 866-405-1717. Jer, coming up, I'm going to put you in the hot seat, man, front and center.
All right.
Because we're going to get into this whole rate game. It's been a common theme not only on the show, but in past wrap-ups and in almost every client we meet with. The rates are driving the market right now. So we're going to get into this. We're going to look at some stats. We're going to draw some theories. We're going to project some outcomes. And we're going to do all that live right when we come back.